Hey, Michael, good to see you. Thanks for your time.
Likewise.
Your thoughts
Likewise.
on,
Good to
yeah,
see you.
hey, walk us through all this, cut through the noise. What's going on?
Well, there's a lot going on, and we don't have time to get to all of it right now. But I will tell you what I'm seeing is a slowly developing movement that has the potential to really impact the public discourse in the United States for the foreseeable future. I'm not necessarily sure it's going to get to that point, though, because we're at the end of April, and most universities are in their last week of classes. Finals are next week, graduation the week after that, and then everybody goes their separate ways. So it may be too late for it to spark as broadly as it can, but at least at this point, what we're seeing is, in my view, the slow developing opposition to what's going on in Gaza. We've been at this since October of last year, and here we are 6 months later, and only now are we beginning to see those significant protests. I think the visuals of innocent women and children being killed indiscriminately in Gaza has angered a lot of people. And oh, by the way, there is a significant Middle Eastern student population in many universities across the United States. At my university, George Mason University in Northern Virginia, there is certainly a substantial Middle Eastern population who has for a long time kept pretty quiet about all this. But what we're seeing now in this B-roll and what we're beginning to see happen on the nightly news shows that there are some people, including allies of Middle Eastern students, who are beginning to say enough is enough.
Okay, let me propose a counter argument. University is to learn, to go to school, to get your degree. This kind of stuff is not what you're supposed to be doing at university. You're there to learn. You're not supposed to be engaging in civil disobedience. I know there's a debate about that, but what would you say to those Republicans, for example, and others, including some parents who, were at recent graduation ceremonies, Michael, that were disrupted by all this kind of stuff, right?
Well, some of that may be true. I would also add that there's a long tradition of civil disobedient protest in the United States. All of the protesting around the Vietnam War initially started on college campuses. And there have been campus movements throughout the years, whether it's the anti-apartheid movement in the United States, the BDS movement, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement that started in the United States in about 2005. A lot of that has been rooted on American campuses. So, the educational process, I can assure you, Todd, is more than just what happens in a classroom. And so for me, as long as it's peaceful, as long as it's respectful, as long as it's honest and truthful, I'm pretty good with it.
How much of a problem is this for Joe Biden, do you think, right now?
I think it depends on how long it continues. If, as I mentioned a moment ago, by the time you get to the middle of May, campuses are going to be pretty empty across the country. So if this is the most of it, then I think it goes away. And now, of course, the Republicans will do all they can to tie this to Biden and make it as widely disseminated as possible. But I do think that if they can get through, the middle of May, it won't have a big impact. If this continues on into the fall, then there's a real problem.
We know that the Republicans and others have said, look, these universities are run by a bunch of Democrats and leftists. They let this spiral out of control. They should have controlled this far sooner, and here's the result. Is there any truth to that? Forget about the politics, but the idea that, some of the administrators at these universities could have, should have, might have handled this a little bit better earlier on to prevent these tent encampments and all these arrests and suspensions and graduation ceremonies being disrupted and whatnot. What do you think?
Listen, there's always room for a critique of university leaders, and I'm not going to go too far in that, given my own position. But I will tell you, Todd, university presidents aren't built for this kind of stuff. They rarely have to deal with it. I mean, there's a protest here or there about something going on campus, but these international issues at some level are beyond their preparation. Now, that says something about their preparation. They ought to at least have some people around them that can help guide them. But generally speaking, I don't look to university presidents to handle these things well, because there's so many different competing factors that are involved. So I just think going forward, university presidents, university leaders, faculty members, for example, all have to be moving toward a direction of truth and honesty. And as long as that can happen, I think that we can overcome any of these difficulties that may exist at some level. They're temporary.
Hey, one last question. The New York Times raising the issue of what happened in 1968 at the Democratic Convention in Chicago, rocked by demonstrations, of course. Some say it helped elect Richard Nixon because he was the Republican candidate. People thought, wow, the Democrats can't even, host their own convention peacefully. There is another Democratic convention coming up. It is in Chicago again. Do you see this affecting that?
Not yet. This Chicago is very different from that Chicago. That Chicago had a police force that was very much dedicated to public brutality. There's no question about that. You just look at what happened with the Black Panther Party in Chicago at that time. So I think we're in a different space. And I also think that the Biden campaign, the Democratic Party, and other entities understand that they cannot allow this to be a problem in Chicago because they would, in fact, hand the presidency back to Donald Trump.